As you can see, my ironing board is in need of repair. I need a whole new cover. So I'm going to show you how you can repair or replace your ironing board cover. A lot less expensive than when you buy one that's kind of costly in the store. I'm going to start by removing my cover so that you get down to the frame. And as you see, my ironing board, it's very sturdy. It's an old school ironing board. It's wider than your average ironing board. I found this at a yard sale. It was all rusty and everything, but I love the fact that the frame is still in good shape. So I've been using this for several years and it is holding up. It doesn't wobble. It's very sturdy. So we're going to start by purchasing some batting. And I just have some basic batting that you would use if you were making a quilt. And there are no patterns for this. You're going to actually do this at the ironing board. I'm laying my batting on my ironing board. And I want to leave it just a little bit because when you do your cover, you want the batting to wrap around the ironing board. I want 2 layers on my ironing board because I want my ironing board nice and thick. And also, once you start ironing on it, this will get flatter. So I'm using 2 layers so to give me an opportunity to have my ironing board cover last a lot longer because it'll be nice and thick. You want to grab a really good pair of cutting scissors. And I'm going to cut my cover the length of my ironing board. And I'm going to leave out about a few inches, just a couple of inches on each side. Now that I've got my batting pretty much just basically laid out, and you can do this, what I'm about to do, you can do this in the beginning if you want, but it just was easier for me because my batting was so big. I'm using a highlighter because I don't want this to stay permanently. And I'm just going to outline. What I'm doing is I'm outlining right where the base of the ironing board, I'm using it as a pattern, and I'm just going to trace this around, all the way around the ironing board. Well, I've got my ironing board traced out. You won't be able to see this because the highlighter is very light, but that's what I wanted. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave about 2 inches because we want it to wrap around and go underneath the ironing board. I'm going to measure and cut 2 inches out all the way around the ironing board. I've moved my ironing board out of the way, and now I'm on my cutting table. And what I've done, as you can see, it's pretty much looking like an ironing board now. So remember I said I wanted mine to be thick, so I'm going to cut out 2 of these to make my ironing board cover. And then I'm going to cut out 2 pieces of fabric. This is the fabric that I've chosen. It's a cotton, and that's what I recommend that you get. Is I just got a basic simple cotton. This is kind of pretty, got some greenery on it. And I'm going to leave it doubled. I'm going to lay out my ironing board cover. Now for the cover, I want to leave about 2 inches as well outside of the cover because you want it to wrap under the ironing board and be nice and tight as well. Here are my 2 layers of the batting. We're ready to cut out the fabric. My batting is laid out on my fabric. Pull it down a little bit. And remember, you're going 2 inches outside of the batting is what you're going to cut. So I'm roughly cutting 2 inches all the way around the batting. My 2 pieces of batting are cut out. And I have my 2 pieces of my fabric, my cotton fabric for the ironing board cut out. So we're ready pretty much to sew. So let's get started for our next step. The first thing you're going to do to finish up the ironing board cover is I'm going to separate the sheets or the pattern, the fabric for the cover, and I'm going to put them wrong sides together. I'm going to finish off these edges. So I'm going to use a serge stitch. If you don't have a serger, I suggest you cut your fabric a little bit larger, maybe 3 inches instead of 2. And then that way you can turn your fabric twice if you want a finished edge. If you don't want a finished edge, because nobody will see it, you can just leave it raw. I serged the edge together. So as you see, when you flip it, it's on both sides. You've got the pretty side. And so my edges are stitched together so it's enclosed. From the old ironing board cover, as you notice, I didn't even sew it. I just put it in there, ran it through, and then tightened it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this elastic up, and I'm going to reuse this elastic. It doesn't make any sense to buy any more So I removed the elastic from the old ironing board cover, and we're going to simply put it into the new one. And we're not going to be using any safety pins. We're not going to do any of that because, as I told you, this was going to be quick, simple, and very, very easy. So I'm going to show you how we're going to insert the elastic without threading it, and we're going to go all the way around the ironing board cover. Now, to insert the elastic, you're going to follow this simple step. Very, very easy. You want to leave a good bit of elastic on the end, and we're going to start by just folding over. And now you see why I surged, because now I can just stitch right there. You don't have to stitch close to the elastic at all. You can stitch close to the end. You can just have fun with this. So I'm just going to stitch this all the way around, and you're going to stitch it until you run out of elastic. And then I'm going to show you what we're going to do when we run out of elastic. Now you see I've run out of elastic, or I'm running out, and I'm not even halfway through. So I'm going to go back to the beginning where I attach my elastic here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull this through, leaving my needle down. I'm just going to pull the elastic through. And it's going to start to bunch up as I pull it. Okay, because I want to release that I had too much sticking out. So I'm going to take the tail of the elastic where I started, and I'm going to wrap it back on itself on top of the casing. Then you're going to take a safety pin and you're going to pin it in place. And you notice I'm using a big, thick safety pin. So close the pin. And now what I'm going to do, I still got my needle down into the thread. Be real careful because you don't want to pull your needle out, but I'm pulling the elastic and I'm adjusting it as I go, and I'm spreading it out. Okay, see, and now we're going to continue on all the way around, and you'll keep doing that until you get back to the very end or the beginning of the opening. Well, as you see, I've made it back to the beginning of where my elastic was inserted. So I think I'm going to leave my pin there for now. So you want to back stitch so that it doesn't come undone, because this little opening that we have, let me show you that. This little opening is probably about 1 inch wide. We're going to leave it open. I'm not going to close it up at all. It's going to be open because what we're going to do is I'm going to take these two elastic pieces and I'm going to tie them together. So by tying them together under the ironing board, no one will see them. And when your ironing board cover gets old and you want to replace it, you can take this elastic out and keep using it over and over and over and over again. Well, here's our 2 layers of the batting. We've got them on the ironing board first. And this is our cover. See what it looks like? It's real tiny. Really not that tiny. I'm going to take 2 of the safety pins and I'm going to go ahead and pin them both in place because you want them to stay in place while you're trying to fit the cover on top of the ironing board. And now I'm going to pin the other side as well. Now it's going to be very tight trying to get this on your ironing board and trying to keep this batting straight. But you can do it. It can be done, and it's very tricky, but it can be done. Okay, this is the wide end of my cover. And as you're holding, I've got my elbow holding this part down. And as I hold it down, I'm going to put it on like that. Make sure you got the corners lined up. Now I'm going to stretch it, and when I stretch it, I'm working the elastic, and I'm pulling it really tight because you want a nice fit. As you see, it rolls over, and it takes care of all the batting. And now as you see, I've got my cover on, but we're not done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the ironing board over. And now what you're going to do is you're going to tighten up that elastic and tie a couple of knots, and then you'll be done. Now I've got the ironing board turned over, and this is the wide end here. Now what I've done is I've attached my pins to the edge of each piece of the elastic. And I'm doing that because I want to be able to tie them without them coming undone. So what I'm going to do is I'm using my pins, and I'm going to tie my elastic. And you do that so that your elastic doesn't bounce back in there. And now we can get the elastic nice and tight. And I'm going to tie it again to get my knot. And once I've got my knot, then I'll take the pins out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie another knot. And there our elastic works. Now our ironing board cover is on and we're ready to iron. So I hope you try this project. Happy sewing! As you can see, my ironing board is in need of repair. I need a whole new cover. So I'm going to show you how you can repair or replace your ironing board cover. A lot less expensive than when you buy one that's kind of costly in the store. I'm going to start by removing my cover so that you get down to the frame. And as you see, my ironing board, it's very sturdy. It's an old school ironing board. It's wider than your average ironing board. I found this at a yard sale. It was all rusted and everything, but I love the fact that the frame is still in good shape. So I've been using this for several years and it is holding up. It doesn't wobble. It's very sturdy. So we're going to start by purchasing some batting. And I just have some basic batting that you would use if you were making a quilt.